Yesterday, we talked about how far away the Flames were from being a playoff team. Today, we're going to discuss how they can go about closing that gap.
You're Locked On Flames, your daily podcast on the Calgary Flames. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's edition of Locked On Flames. I am your host, Nick Zararis. Jess still does not have a voice. We were going to attempt to record her first episode since Monday, but Jess's voice just not cooperating yet, so I'm going to hold it down. We've got a good show in store for you guys today, Locked On Flames, where we got your team covered every single day. And today, we're going to be discussing how the Flames can go about closing the gap in terms of goal scoring between them and teams that are currently in the playoffs and get closer to that gap. So laying it out for you, we're going to start by building off of yesterday's episode, talking about that 20 to 30 goals that the Flames probably need in addition to what they already have to close the gap between them and the teams in the postseason. We're going to talk about the actual mechanics, what they could do stylistically, maybe structurally, to facilitate greater chance creation. And then we're going to wrap up today's show talking about just how far they actually are and what some of those changes could look like. So starting off, yesterday we diagnosed the Flames problem as a couple layers. Number one, they're in a transitionary period. So maybe this episode idea is a year too early, that the goal for them next season, 2024, 2025, isn't to find another 20 to 30 goals and close the gap between them and, say, LA and Nashville, who are the last two teams in playoff spots in the Western Conference. Maybe the goal is to stink. Maybe the goal is to give young players an opportunity to maybe overachieve, and that skews the team results more favorably than people would expect based on the talent on the roster. But for the purposes of this conversation, the Flames are leaving offense on the table as we currently speak, because they are a team that operates based on a volume concept as opposed to a quality concept. Volume meaning a lot of scoring chances. It doesn't necessarily matter where they're coming from, but the idea is gain the zone, get the puck on net, crash the net for rebounds, get screens in front, look for deflections. The Flames' goal is to overwhelm you with speed and to overwhelm you with effort. They know they're not that talented of a team in terms of raw goal scoring. They know that if it comes down to trying to get the puck to dirty areas, they don't have maybe the hands and the hockey IQ to facilitate getting to those dangerous areas of the ice where good scoring chances come from. And that leads to the first point of today's episode. The Flames have underperformed their chance creation for 2 seasons in a row now. 2 years ago, the season they had the 110 standings points, one of the best teams in the league. They overperformed their expected goals by about 10. The year before that, the 56-game season, they performed exactly commensurate with their expected goals by Evolving Wild's model. By HockeyViz.com's expected goals model. So I have their expected goals versus their actual goals from 3 models. And you're going to have to bear with me because the first one, the numbers they're very different from the other ones, but that's because it takes out the impacts of players who've been traded like Zadorov, Lindholm, Hanifin, and Tanev. So HockeyViz.com, very useful website. HockeyViz has the Calgary Flames at 215 expected goals versus 208 actual goals. Evolving Wild, another very useful website. They have the Flames at 248 expected goals versus 227 actual goals. The Flames do actually have 227 goals. Money Puck, 224 expected goals versus 227 expected goals. So with the Flames leaving offense on the table, that leads you to believe that something in the calculus is not adding up. But being that we have, 10, 15 years of this advanced this advanced statistic data to kind of form our opinions off of and understand patterns better. We know that teams like the Flames, like the Hurricanes, like last year's Kraken, teams that funnel the puck on net like crazy from all over, they're not really worried about getting the puck to dangerous areas. The name of the game for those types of teams is tempo, putting pressure on the goalie, and trying to force the goalie and the defenseman on the ice into making plays happen, because the more plays you force the other team to make, the more likely they are to make a mistake. We know that teams that opt for the volume approach, they are the teams that are most likely going to underperform expected goals models, because yes, they are accumulating expected goals when they take that shot from the point or from the top of the circle or from the end line where it's where it's parallel to the net. They're going to take those shots and they're going to end up on the net. And as you add each individual scoring chance up and the value commensurate with each of those scoring chances, the expected goals number is going to tick up and up and up and up. But because those chances aren't particularly dangerous, they're not going to go in more often than not, unless, and this is where the caveat comes in and where a lot of this conversation about the Flames' woes come from, unless you have an elite finisher. If you have a Connor McDavid, you have an Austin Matthews, a Nathan McKinnon, a Leon Draisaitl, if you've got a bona fide elite player that's got a shot where he can rip it from anywhere on the ice and he can beat the goalie clean, then the expected goals don't matter as much, because you're going to be able to outshoot your expected goals. There are plenty of teams, like the Rangers in particular, of years past that have been able to play this style where they don't take a lot of individual chances, but they hang around on expected goals and actual goals because the chances they do create are particularly dangerous, or they're able to outshoot their expected goal problems because of the finishing talent they have. The Flames are not in that boat. Right now, the Flames for this season, they're shooting 9.8% on the season. The league average this year, and this will fluctuate year to year, is 10.1. So we're talking about 0.3% difference between league average and the Flames. So we're not talking about a massive difference versus other teams. That tells me the Flames are pretty close to where they're supposed to be, in all honesty. It's not that they're not scoring because they're getting unlucky. 9.8% is pretty close to 10.1. 0.3% is like one goal every other week if we're talking about shooting percentage for an entire team. So that tells me the Flames really can't squeeze that much more out of their given group. 3 players in particular, though, I will highlight as guys who have a little bit of room, and maybe the Flames can be a bit above average next year. Jonathan Huberdeau, below his career average. Michael Backlund, below his career average. And Matt Coronato, he doesn't have much of a career average, being that he's got less than like 30 games at the NHL level. But being that he's only shot 4% this season, and Matt Coronato profiles as somebody who's going to be a 20-25 goal guy, you figure that number will be closer to 10%. It might be 8, it might be 9, but he'll give you a couple more, and that percentage can tick up, to 9.9 or 10 even, as opposed to 10.1. And then somebody who's going to come back down, I don't even need to say might, Kuzmenko. Andrei Kuzmenko is shooting 27% as a Calgary Flame. He's just not going to do it. Excuse me. He's shooting 24.3%. He shot 27% as a Canuck 2 years ago when he scored 39 goals. This year, in 21 games as a Flame, he has 9 goals. He's shooting 24.3%. That number is going to come down. Nobody in the NHL shoots 24% over an entire season. They don't. Unless you play very sparingly, if you're a guy who has 40 shots on the entire season, then maybe we could talk about you shooting 24%. But Kuzmenko's career average is 243 shots on goal for a season. If he comes back down to earth, which in my opinion, he has shot above average for his entire NHL career in Vancouver and in Calgary. So we can pencil him in for conservatively 12, 13%. If Kuzmenko were to shoot 13% on 243 shots on goal next year, that would be 32 goals, which would still be a top 50 goal scorer in the entire league, which is nothing to sneeze at. We're talking about where the Flames can find another 20 to 30 goals in their team total for the season. Kuzmenko might be able to give you 10. He might be able to give you 15 more goals. And then your math becomes a lot more doable. But before we move on, we are going to have to take a quick break. Speaking of our friends over at eBay Motors, passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance: superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. With eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available for U.S. customers. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that screaming? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the yelling. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. If you are here on this Thursday edition of Locked On Flames, thanks for hanging out. I've been doing an okay job holding it down with the Zach Bryan flu. If you hear my voice a little raspy, that's why. Moving along our conversation here. We talked a little bit that the Flames probably have a little bit of room to improve. Not a ton. I'm not expecting massive upticks in goal scoring from a lot of guys on this team, just because not a lot of them profile as finishers. Like even Jonathan Huberdeau, who we mentioned in the first segment as somebody with some room for improvement as far as goal scoring, his previous career high in goals is 30. He's probably not going to sniff 30 goals again as a Flame, barring somebody else coming along to facilitate. And what I mean by that, Huberdeau is at his best when he's riding shotgun with somebody who can create space for him. That enables Huberdeau to play make at that really high level that he was at 2 years ago in Florida, where he had 115 points and was one of the best players in the entire league. I mean, he finished 5th in the Hart Trophy voting 2 seasons ago. You can't do that by accident. Sure, the environment was very favorable on that Florida team. They played at a really high tempo with lots of volume and lots of dangerous scoring chances. But I think it's reasonable to ask Huberdeau to get to 20. And you add that 10, you add Kuzmenko's 10 to 15, and we're suddenly a lot closer to those 20 to 30 goals we're going to need to close that gap. But how can the Flames improve their results? Finishing talent is the single most valuable skill in the NHL. I don't care. You want to talk about foot speed, you want to talk about playmaking, toughness. God forbid you bring up faceoffs in a conversation. I'm not going to take you seriously, but the Flames are a volume team. Unless they are able to acquire a genuinely elite player, they're going to have to stay a volume team. This is what teams that don't have an elite player do. All due respect to Carolina, I like Aho. I like Jake Gensel. Hell, I like Seth Jarvis. None of those guys is elite. They're good. They're all really good individual players. None of those guys is in the top 20 or 30 players in the league. They're just not. And when you don't have one of those elite guys to close the gap, to score from non-dangerous areas, it's going to require a little bit more of a team effort. It's going to require you to win some foot races. It's going to require you to out-leverage guys, use your body positioning. It's going to require you to win some scrums in front of the net. It's going to require you to eat some cross-checks in your lower back from defensemen who are trying to clear the crease in front of their goaltender. So the Flames are 9th in the entire league in scoring chances for per 60 minutes of ice time at 5-on-5. That makes sense. They are a rate-based offense. They need to accumulate volume because they know they're not going to be able to create particularly dangerous chances. How do we know that? They are 18th in expected goals for per 60, and they are 18th in high danger chances for per 60. So they're not bottom of the barrel in terms of creating quality chances, but they're below average. They are not what you would consider a dangerous threat offensively. They're not a team that's going to be able to work the puck into those dangerous areas. And by definition, high danger chance. Okay, so if you close your eyes and you draw diagonal lines from the face-off dots down to the corners of the post, and then you complete the trapezoid on the goal line, and then from the face-off circle to the face-off circle, that's considered a high danger chance. From within the circles down into the net mouth, those are dangerous chances that are more likely to go in based on what we understand. Now, expected goals is not perfect. It does not account for pre-shot movement by the goalie or players around the net front. It does not account for a player's shooting talent. So they are an imperfect measure of the quality of a scoring chance, but they give us a baseline understanding of what teams are doing in the offensive zone. They're good to get a snapshot understanding of what a team is doing. If you go and you marry the expected goals data to watching the games, you get a significantly better and more detailed understanding of what's going on during the course of a game. And for people like me who do a podcast, it gives you a frame of reference. I can't go back and watch an entire Flames game from beginning to end every single time a second time. Watching the game live, yeah, that's fine. That's my job. I'm expected to do that when I am doing a podcast about the Flames every day. But I can't do that if I want to put together an episode on, a couple minutes notice. If I'm going to go put together some notes, I can go pull up the shooting map from a particular game. I can see who took a shot. I can see the game situation they took the shot in, where on the ice it was, and at what time in the game it was. So if I do that, I can get a quicker, I can go pull that up as a reference, put together notes, and then explain something a little more nuanced than if I were forcing myself to rewatch an entire game and then fast forwarding through trying to find the particular sequence I'm looking for. I can, and I do this, something I will do if I watch the condensed game highlights on YouTube to refresh my memory, because for whatever reason, a particular goal or save in my memory, I don't remember what led up to it happening. Usually it will be in the condensed game highlights. Then I can marry that with the shot maps and I get a more detailed understanding of what happened. It will help jog my memory. And that way, when I am doing the podcast, I have a better portrayal in my mind of what I'm trying to explain. And it makes me understand the game a little bit better. The idea here for the Flames of how they can be a little bit more dangerous, it's not going to be pretty. It's going to be adding a layer to what they are already doing. They're taking shots from bad areas of the ice, outside of that high danger, top of the circles, the high slot, areas that aren't particularly likely to score. It's from far away. There's traffic in front. But something the Flames can do, and Carolina has been good at this at times. Colorado has been good at this at times. You're going to have to look for more deflections. The Flames don't have a Joe Pavelski. They don't have a Chris Kreider. They don't have an Anders Lee. They don't have somebody who's great at the net front tip game. That's a dimension the Flames have to be able to add if they're not going to be able to find that elite goal scorer. That's something that, in my opinion, is teachable. That is something with hard work you can get better at over the course of your career. Joe Pavelski is timeless. He is ageless because he's added this dimension to his game to compensate for his loss of foot speed. Chris Kreider was not this good at tipping the puck at the net front when he came into the league. This is a skill you develop over an extended period of time, where if you hang around the league long enough, you add it to be a tool in your bag. And gives you an extra dimension on the power play, something the Flames need to address because, again, they don't have a high-end goal scorer. So, in turn, you're going to need to kind of fugazi your way into more goals. And one of the ways you can do that is net front stuff. And it's tough. You are going to have to eat cross-checks to the back. You are going to have to win leverage battles. You are going to have to deal with the goalie hitting you in the back, trying to get you out of their way. But in light of not being able to add a 30-goal scorer on a whim, this is a path to creating more offense. And something I will add to that, it will make the Flames more efficient offense. The Flames don't do a bad job of getting the puck into the offensive zone with possession. They are not a pure dump and chase team anymore. The problem is they don't create a lot of chances when they get to the offensive zone. And I know I was talking about volume. And when I say they don't create a ton of offense once they get. And I know I said about the Flames are a volume offense, but when I say they're not creating a lot when they get to the offensive zone, I'm saying in relation to other teams. I'm not talking about the rate at which they do it. I'm talking about in comparison to other teams. The only player who is gaining the zone with control and generating offense from it consistently is Nazem Kadri. Kadri is their best pure puck carrier. They need more of those types of guys to give themselves more dimensions to their offense. And we will wrap up with talking about a little bit more about the mechanics of how the Flames can improve their offense after. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this. Now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started on robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA is available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. Thanks to everybody hanging out on this Thursday edition of Locked On Flames, where we've got the Flames covered every single day. Even through the early stages of the playoffs, we will be still coming at you guys daily. The last thing to talk about on today's show, and this is not rocket science. You're going to hear me explain this and say, Nick, I know that. The Flames know that, but they materially can't do that. But for the purposes of this conversation, for this thought exercise, for analyzing how they play offense and trying to find more actual goals in relation to their process, you heard me mention the net front play, the tips, the deflections, the rebounds. That's an element the Flames can add to their game immediately. They are going to need to sacrifice some defense. And believe me, the Flames defense is not great. I am not talking about just their defensemen, literally in terms of their defense. I'm talking about their team defense. I'm talking about their forwards coming back on the back check. I'm talking about their neutral zone. The forwards are going to need to cheat for offense. And maybe that's not something that Ryan Huska is comfortable with, and maybe that's why the Flames aren't cheating for offense. They're not pinching that extra defenseman down to try and manipulate their numbers. Maybe they're not pinching that extra forward down towards the middle for that exact reason at 5-on-5 because they don't trust their defense. But if the Flames are going to find more offense, it is more likely than not going to have to come from effort and positioning. It is not going to be raw goal scoring. It is not going to be putting the puck in the net from dangerous areas. It's not going to be playing off of the rush more and trying to create that rainbow road pass from circle to circle where you catch the goalie moving, the most dangerous play in hockey. You're not going to be able to do that with the talent the Flames have. So if the Flames are going to try and be competitive, they're going to have to follow the Seattle plan, the Carolina plan, the Flyers plan, the Blue Jackets when they were good under John Tortorella plan. You are going to have to be rigid defensively, and you are going to have to outwork the other team. The Flames have guys who are good at that. You've heard me talk about Kadri quite a bit on this episode. He's been their best forward, arguably their best overall player this season. He is somebody who has that ability to get to the net front and make plays happen, even if we're talking about rebounds, deflections, or traffic in front. You know how much I love Blake Coleman's game. You know how much I love Andrew Mangiapane's game. You know how much I love Michael Backlund's game. Those three guys in Kadri are legitimate pains in the butt to play against, who are going to be able to win leverage, who are going to be able to win puck battles and engage at the net front. They also can do that with Connor Zary. They can also do that with Martin Pospisil. The problem for the Flames, if this is the only way they are going to be able to create offense, other teams are going to be able to cue in on that. They are going to be able to try and clog up the middle. They are going to break up that cross seam pass from side to side. And even if there is traffic in front, they're going to send their defenseman out and break up the passing lane. And that's going to, in turn, force the Flames to work harder for offense. Or what's happened this season in relation to the Flames trying to create offense, they're going to take those crappy scoring chances. They're going to settle for that shot that's going to get blocked on the way into the net front. They're going to settle for that shot that's not going to make the goalie move. They're going to shoot right at the goalie's chest because there isn't a clear shooting lane that isn't going to hit somebody on the way in. When you are a team that lacks elite finishing, you have to be more resourceful. I am not doubting the Flames' desire to be better. There are a lot of seasoned professionals on this team, guys like Kadri, guys like Coleman, guys like Backlund, guys like Mangiapane, who have real pride. You know, Jess and I talked a lot through February and March that the Flames were not just going to roll over and die once they started trading guys away, like Lindholm, Hanifin, Tanev, Zadorov. I know Zadorov was traded back in December, but you get my point here. The Flames are not a team that's going to be content. You know, they're not going to do what the Blue Jackets did this year. They're not going to do what the Wild did this year, where if things start to go wrong, it'll snowball on them until they're bottom of the barrel. The Flames, for all of their warts, for all of their shortcomings talent-wise, they have pride and they don't cheat you. Occasionally, yeah, they're going to make stupid turnovers. They're going to force a bad pass trying to break out of their zone and paying poor Jacob Markstrom out to dry. They're going to make Dustin Wolf's life a little bit more difficult because they're trying to overcompensate. I understand that part of hockey is that fundamental out of structure play, that hockey is the least structured of the four major North American sports. And a lot of it comes down to decision-making and tendencies. And the more you fall back on your habits, your tendencies, the better other teams are going to be able to play on you. That's why it's so important you have a diverse style of play. But being that the Flames are really kind of pigeonholed based on the talent they have, they're going to have to find ways to outwork other teams. That's not the prettiest way. It's not going to be the most effective way, but it will keep the Flames in games. The Flames, more likely than not, will be, you know, the 12th or 13th worst team in the league next year. I would be very surprised if the Flames had top 5 lottery odds next year, because I just think the guys they have aren't going to play that poorly. And like I said in the opening segment and the second segment, they have guys on this team, little more meat on the bone for them to chew on. You know, Huberdeau can sniff 20. Maybe you get 10 or 15 out of Matt Coronado. Kuzmenko the full season, maybe he gives you 25 to 30. Then the goal scoring becomes a little bit more palatable as far as making up the gap between them and a playoff team. And maybe because you're scoring a little bit more, there's a little bit less pressure on your defense. Maybe you're able to hold the puck in the offensive zone a little bit more. In today's NHL, the best defense is to not play defense at all. The more you play defense, the more likely you are to concede a scoring chance against. Of course, you want to do stuff when you're in the offensive zone, but holding the puck in the offensive zone for 90 seconds, even if you don't get a scoring chance, that's not a bad shift. That's not a bad 2 shifts if guys come off and you maintain possession long enough to do that. That is a difficult but actionable plan towards improvement for the Flames in the near future. But that will just about do it for today's edition of Locked On Flames. Make sure you are subscribed wherever you get your podcast, Apple Podcast, Spotify. Please leave the show a 5-star review. If you are watching over on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, like the video, leave a comment. Do you think the Flames can materially get that much better with just marginal improvements to guys who are already here? Let me know. Hopefully, Jess's voice will be back tomorrow and we will be at full strength. I will talk to you guys real soon.